Welcome to Actions and Limits. My name is Justin Atherton. I'm the Peak Performance Consultant for Confidence Unchained. With me as always is Paul Fortune. Paul is a mindset coach and the founder of A Call to Action. And together we make Actions and Limits. Welcome to the show, the podcast where we talk about the actions we can take and the limits we create. Paul, I'm excited for our guest today. I know he's a friend of yours, Jevon Perra. I was checking out his content, and he's very similar to an author. I've read a couple of his books, Eckhart Tolle. Have you ever heard of any of his stuff, Paul?
You've told me about him quite a bit, but can you elaborate for me?
So I don't know how I was introduced to this book. I don't know who suggested it to me, but I read it within the last year or two. That he has The Power of Now, which was his first book, and then A New Earth. And for me, when I read those, I actually was on Audible, so I'm actually listening to those books. I say read, right? It was a very different type of perspective. And this is the vibe I got from Jevon's book that he wrote, The Captain. I don't know how else to describe it other than just kind of like this kind of spiritual hippie-ish type of stuff. And definitely not something I would normally read. And I thought it was very interesting because it opens your eyes up or your mind up to a different type of perspective about, your ego, your perceptions of the world. And it's a different way to look at it. There were some congruencies in there on the way that he talked about things. It was just like a different way to look at it. So that's kind of the vibe I got off of Jevon's book, and a lot of his content was kind of related to Eckhart Tolle. So I'm excited.
Do you know anything about Eckhart Tolle's life on how he got his perspective? I mean, we're going to talk to Jevon about his perspective, but how about Eckhart Tolle?
He talks about it in his book a lot. I know. How
old is he? Do you know? Is he an older guy, younger guy, middle aged?
I feel like he's older. I want to say 50s, 60s. He may be older than that. I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to quote. I haven't looked that much into Eckhart Tolle.
I just want to know where he's coming from. Sometimes you can kind of tell, an author's age by just different culture.
His story is kind of interesting. He actually writes it in his book. He talks about how he was homeless for a long time, and it was by choice. And then came out of that with this different realization on operating in the world, and now he's like a best-selling author. So it's definitely an interesting story, and he does talk about it in the book. But
I don't know if I would recommend that to anybody, but if it worked for him.
Right. Yeah, don't homeless by choice. Yeah, that's maybe not go down that path. But yeah, I think Jevon will be a very interesting conversation. I think it'll be a little bit different than what we're used to having on the show. But I'm excited to have him out. So let's go ahead and bring him out then. So Jevon considers himself a conscious advisor. His day job is helping people with refi and purchase home loans. His life job is helping people discover their true identity. Both jobs meld into one as a conscious advisor. Consciousness is awareness. Are you conscious or awake? Most are not. 99% of our experience come from repeated thoughts, not new ones, and most of those repeated thoughts are negative or declaring a life we do not prefer. Jevon's gift is to awaken awareness of new opportunities for life. Sometimes this is a great mortgage, and sometimes it's a great whole new life. So everyone, welcome out Jevon Perra. Well, Jevon, welcome to the show, man. We're excited to have you. I know Paul was telling me all about you, so welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. You got an interesting bio, you know, a little dichotomy here, your day job and this book you're working on. Tell us a little bit how you got into, you know, this side hustle you got going on, or the book, or this life path you're on right now, man.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. It's well, life path, man. That's a long question. I was born into a very, I'd say, God conscious family, and everybody was always trying to do the right thing, and my family really liked to make sure that I did the right thing, and everybody did the right thing. So it was a hard press to, you know, we're going to this church, we're doing this stuff, we're, you know, saying these things, we look like this, and very well natured. But I got in my mind that it had to be a certain way, or I'd basically get kicked out, maybe go to hell, you know, as a side bonus of disobedience. And so, so I was in that world for a while, and I actually got into professionally as a minister, was starting churches and working in churches and working in nonprofits, and did a lot of that. And then after almost a decade of being a professional God searcher, I don't know what I was. Then I got into home loans. Obviously, what else would you do? And
how did that happen? I mean, you're in this ministry, and then all of a sudden, home loans. That's quite a right turn.
That doesn't make sense. Well, I went to this. There's all these little things that happen in all of our lives that, in hindsight, maybe make sense and tick together, and maybe some of this won't ever make sense until we look back after we're dead and review it all. But there was one event, though, that was really impactful for me, and it was this 4-day workshop, and the workshop was designed to break down your paradigms. And these paradigms are all these rules that you have for yourself that you don't even know that you have. They're basically the way that you make sense of life and the way that you build this experience that you're having. That's why two people can walk into the same room with the same people there, and those two people can have a completely different experience of the people and the room, right? One person's like, wow, look at all these friends. And the other person's like, oh crap, I need to get out of here. They're going to attack me. I'm going to get rejected, that kind of thing. And so it was a workshop on how to see see what you got going on, your filters, your paradigm. And so at the end of that workshop, that 4 days, I had discovered wasn't my only motivation, but a huge motivation for me was approval. I really wanted people, my family, everybody I met to approve of me and to love me, really. And I was working like crazy to be the perfect person to be loved. And at the end of it, I thought, wow, I thought I was doing all this for God, for people, but I realized I'm performing so that I can get your approval. And that's not a gift. I wasn't giving to give for the joy of giving. I was giving to receive. And once I got that, I thought, wow, I'm bartering right now. It's more accurate what I'm doing. It's more accurate to say I'm bartering. And it's not even bad, but I just was unaware that that's what I was doing. And so I thought, man, I thought this was all me giving because I love God, and that's not what I'm doing. And so I just put everything on hold. I quit. And I grew up in a real estate family. So I did some interviews and thought, well, do I want to be a lender? Do I want to be a real estate agent? Don't have any money to buy real estate, so I'm not going to be an investor quite yet. And so I just landed on lending.
That seems like a powerful realization, like going and realize I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not doing this for others. I'm literally, doing this for this, gratification. Like, I wonder how many people, out there can say that they've come to that realization. It's like, whether you didn't want to be doing it or you're doing it for the wrong reasons, that's a very interesting realization. Is that when you started the idea for the book, or when did that come to you?
Well, the book's further down the line. I wrote The Captain out of a need, really out of a desire to be in people's lives again in an intentional way. And I didn't want to be a pastor again. I love pastors. I love the church. I love that whole thing. I didn't want to do that role anymore. It wasn't authentic for me to do that again. So I thought, well, I want to write a story, basically kind of replicating my journey up till this point, and maybe more people will read it. Maybe I'll trick some people into reading what looks like maybe a sci-fi, and there's my underlying meaning that I'm trying to get across, right? Is it an allegory as opposed to just something fun to pick up? And it's a spiritual allegory, so it's pretty heavy with spiritual stories and lessons, and and that kind of thing. But man, Justin, everybody's doing this. We're all doing this. It's incredible to be aware of it, but we all have our rules. We all have our filters. And to think that any one of us has it figured out is not only delusion, but it's also arrogance, because we're trying to, when it comes to eternity anyway, we're trying to put linear, finite language on something that is infinite and has no linearity. There is no part one goes to part B, goes to part three, C. See, that would be more accurate.
There you
Part
go.
A goes to part two, goes to part Nantucket, right? It's just there's no real way to put it all together. Infinity anyway. And so that's what I was trying to figure out. It's like, why are we here? What's the purpose for my life? What's the purpose for existence? Stuff that was impossible to have someone just hand over to you, at least in a way that I can understand at the time.
Sure.
So you said 2004. So was there a period of time when you were a mortgage loan officer that you really kind of ignored your spirituality and kind of just, lived a different life, or what was that period of life before you had some awakening?
I did my very best to be as big of a sinner as I could. I tried really hard. And
what do you mean by that?
I mean, if anybody grew up in the church, maybe you didn't grow up in the church, but there's the sinners and there's the redeemed, and those who've been saved. And I had been the saved one forever, and I didn't, I was like, well, what were we being saved from? Let me try that out. I want to go, try to hook up with girls and drink and whatever else I can get into. And so.
Sounds like a Billy Joel song, sinners have more fun,
Yeah. I'm like, I'll experience that. That sounds cool. And so there's a window there. To be honest, my well-intended beginning, that good intention never left me. And so I quickly, drinking makes, booze and drugs and lots of girls. It's like, it really wasn't what I was looking for. And I was looking for fulfillment and significance. And anybody who goes down that path, even when they get it, the nature of desire is that it creates desire. So all those things that aren't bad, I don't fault anybody for wanting any of those things, but the nature of desire in particular, of any of those things, is that it cannot fulfill. It only creates more desire. And the only way to be free from that cycle of not having enough and not being fulfilled is to give up desire altogether and figure out what's behind that. And what's behind your need for desire is this thing called identity and who you are. And if we can get a hold of that by nature, that part of us is spiritual. It's not physical. And it's this spiritual, energetic thing that's running this human body that has all the desires. It's the animal instinct that wants all those things of security and, the sex drive so that we can make more of us and all these things, safety, even really significance, right? I want to be valuable, and I also want to be special. These two valuable and unique and special, and I want to be a part of everything, but I don't want to be lost in the crowd. I want to be seen as special and lovely. And
now, would you relate that to the ego?
Yeah. So the ego is this wonderful thing that's developed from our animal side that is this thing that is aware of itself, kind of. It's the personality, we can say, right? This mask that we put on to be able to engage with each other. And I think that, the ego is great. There's no way to be here in the world and experiencing the earth and experiencing each other without the ego. Thank God for the ego, because if we didn't have it, how are we going to be the unique expressions that we are? There wouldn't be the Paul and Justin and Jevon. It would just be, it would be just God, really, or source, or whatever you want to call it. It's not this wonderful mix of differences and
Sure.
unique expressions and good and bad because of the different opinions and the bland and exotic and all that.
So what's some advice you give to people for struggling with that, or trying to, either struggle with the ego or those drives to, because like you said, alcohol, women, like those are ways to distract yourself from what you really have going on. But what are some advice you give maybe in the book about how to handle some of those things?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing that you can ever do, I think, is to be aware, just to start to watch yourself. And if someone were to just watch themselves, they would gradually, more than likely, they would start be gravitating toward love and light. And if we gravitate towards love and light, healing automatically takes place. So what happens when you watch yourself? Well, you just become aware, because humans don't hurt themselves intentionally. We only we only hurt ourselves or harm ourselves while we're unaware. There's a study with smokers. It even works with cookies. All these things that we can do with ourselves that's harming ourselves, right? Too many cigarettes, too many cookies. That if you're just aware, so let's say you eat 24 cookies a day, you're like, I freaking love cookies. Don't take them away. Cookies are not bad for me, whatever it is. If you did nothing else but count the amount of cookies that you eat every single day, and you make a special note at the end of the day, I'm going to count them. Day number 1, look at that. 3 boxes of cookies. How many cookies is that? Well, that's 60 cookies. Damn, I made a lot of cookies. All right, next day you count them, 60 cookies. Oh my goodness. What's going to happen though is day 4, you're going to be like, oh, look at that, 55 cookies. Day 12, holy moly, 40 cookies. The awareness that I'm eating what I'm eating, it's going to start to change you towards what you really want, instead of just doing something unconsciously to get like this moment of relief that's really a distraction, that's really causing harm. It's really giving me what I don't want down the road. And so just being aware. Watch yourself get angry. I watch myself with desires that come up. I watch myself being insignificant, or I watch myself wanting things that I know I don't want. Just watch yourself doing the dumbest stuff that you know is dumb. And even if you don't try to correct it, there's going to be a natural progression towards health and light and love.
Going back to you getting out of that sinner stage, was your wife part of the reason why you got out of that, or how that come about with your relationship with your wife?
No. Well, no. Well, maybe. Yeah, I think so. It was just we're all still sinners. I'm still a sinner. If you the word sin, right? It's an archery term. It means missing the mark. And so if you shoot bow and arrows, you're shooting, you're trying to hit the mark. And when you don't hit the bullseye, it's called a sin. And you just missed the mark. So it's fine. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't even mean you're a bad archer. It's just, you just missed the mark. And you're like, okay, do I want to hit the mark? Okay, well, what do I got to do next to hit the mark? It's really That's all there is to. There's this whole morality and this good and bad that's laid on top of this idea of missing the mark, that it adds this emotional weight that doesn't need to be there. You don't need this extra weight, which makes these things extra hard. What's the big deal about missing the mark? It doesn't have to be a big deal at all. Better question. Are you having the life that you want to have? Are you having the experience that you want to have? If you are, well, then go for it. In a real sense, once you're above a level of integrity, which I would consider it, once you're not super fearful or super angry or super prideful, like this really fixed egoic states, and you move into a level of courage or willingness, courage and willingness and openness, and maybe even you're able to reason through things. At that point, do the things that feel good and pay attention. And this whole idea of sin is you just leave it behind, and better question when you're there is, hey, does this feel good? Is this working? Does this feel good? Is it working? Does it feel good? Is it working? Pay attention. And you go through these cycles, and you have internal direction at that point. You get led literally from your own senses that are working for you.
So what are some ways that, our audience can get into those states? Because I've done it myself. It's not an easy process to move into that state of extra awareness and stepping above, like you said, the pride and your ego, and separating yourself from that. And I think Eckhart Tolle talks about it in his books, being able to really separate yourself from the ego and be more of an observer to that. But how did you get there, and how do you help other people, get on that same path to separate from that, internal voice, and to, just remove yourself from all those meanings that we place on things?
Meditation has been a real important thing for me, and meditation is, there's a lot of different ways to meditate, but you could, get apps and sit and listen to them to be able to stop your mind chatter. There's this technology called binary beats, and it puts two different tones in your left and your right ear, and it basically helps your brain waves go into those higher brain waves that your brain will go automatically when you get into a deep state of meditation. So you can use crutches like that, which is great. I think the purpose of meditation, though, is to notice your mind and to keep letting it go. And it's really hard. I don't know. It seems literally like the grace of God and, karmic propensity and this amazing cosmic thing that brings something into our awareness. Like, how do you make someone want anything? How do you make someone want peace when they just want to get rich? Or how do you make somebody, how do you help yourself? There's been times when I've been depressed, and how do you get undepressed when you're depressed? I don't know, but there's some burning desire within that helps you take one step, and it doesn't help. And then you're like, shit, I can't stay here either. Then you take one more step, and it doesn't help. And there's just some magic alchemy that happens after 100 of those steps. Then suddenly something feels better, and some book comes into play, or you have a conversation with somebody, and
then it clicks, right?
And then it clicks. And here's the thing that more than ever I'm learning is, it's not our purpose to get out of the pain. It's not our purpose to get out of the ego. It's not our purpose to make the world heaven now. Our purpose really is to experience it, first of all, so that we can be in the middle of the pain and the suffering and whatever darkness is coming our way that we perceive as darkness, and to choose light and to choose love the best we can. Because I think the whole reason that we're here, the whole reason we exist as humans, is because we're on this journey to go back home. And home, I believe, is the creator. Like, it's like this cosmic, awesome, epic Star Wars like thing that's happening. And we're literally here on planet Earth that most humans think is the center of the universe, but it's almost nothing compared to what's available out there. And we're setting ourselves up to meet the creator again. And it's not the heaven that religion says. It's it's epic, and you can't not get there. That's another great thing. I don't think you can't mess it up too bad, but you can make your journey longer, and you can suffer more. And every single opportunity, every single darkness that comes our way, if we do our best to intend love and move towards light, it's working. It's working. It's like literally helping us. The reason why we came to do that every time.
Was that the reason why you wrote the book, The Captain, or what was the main reason why you wrote the book, and what you want the audience to get from reading The Captain?
I was wanting to create some interest in my view of how the universe works, and I created the story. I thought it would be easier to understand what I was talking about if they saw someone go through kind of my life, a loose representation of my journey that I've been on, with certainly a lot of science fiction, which I believe is pretty accurate on what happens to an extent. But I haven't entered, at least not in this form, into any particular realms that I can tell you about besides Earth. Earth's the only one I currently remember. So, but yeah, I'm hoping someone reads it and thinks, wow, my life is bigger than I thought. Wow. This is pretty awesome, this journey. And you're like sitting on your couch and nothing's happened, but your whole world can change. And it's that kind of perspective, right? If you think that you are your body, and if you think when you die, all is lost, it's a real stressful time to be in a place where, there's supposedly a pandemic that's like the Grim Reaper going to knock on your door and, kill you. And there's nothing you can do except, hope you don't die. There's a lot of people in really great fear right now because of what's going on. And versus, what if you can't lose? What if you get as many tries as you need, and in the end you don't lose? You just have different experiences along the way, and it's all leading you to the inevitable prize of going back home. I mean, that's just you can be sitting on your couch, nothing's changed, but you have those two different storylines going in the back of your mind, and your whole world changes.
Yeah, definitely an interesting perspective. So what type of projects are you working on right now? I know you just got the book released. I saw on your site, you said you got the audiobook out as well, right?
Yep. Yeah. So The Captain's out on audible.com. You can get it. JevonPerra.com has the info for the book, but Amazon is usually how people get it, or Audible. I'm writing a follow-up book. Basically, it's a more straightforward book on my message, and the message is that we're spiritual beings having this human experience, and there's different ways for us to get in touch with that eternal part of us, and it helps the journey. But being here is we're all doing the human thing. And so that is the purpose of being here. And so we're all doing a really good job. I think most people don't realize how great of a job they're doing. It's pretty amazing. And I think that quite literally there's a universal audience that's like, holy moly, I can't believe these people are being human so well. Whoa.
We're too busy comparing ourselves to each other, right?
Yeah. it's not a common thing for there to be like such strife and vicious competition and crazy fear and just like these different dark things that we struggle through. It's not necessarily common everywhere. And so there's a lot of admiration, I believe, in the spiritual world for us brave souls that ventured into being human.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the best way for our audience to look you up and check out your content?
So JevonPerra.com. You can find me link well, not LinkedIn. You could, but Facebook, I'm at Jevon Perra. Instagram at Jevon Perra. I got Jevon Perra. The good thing about that name is it's usually free. So I got it. My YouTube channel, a bunch of videos. I'm starting to do more coaching. I don't really know what I'm going to call it, but it's basically healing type coaching sessions. And it's not the kind of healing that I always thought it was going to be. It's more like aligning people to what I believe is true. And what happens when you do that is people heal themselves. And it could be physical maladies, which is pretty cool, but often it's mental stories that torment us, and you're able to realign them to something that feels better, and it frees us up to just live a better life in general.
Jevon, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. Your other job, mortgages.
Yeah.
And a little bit about that. What would you tell, a first-time home buyer right now with the COVID-19 going on, with their employment issues? We don't know if they're going to have a job or not. Would you say that this is a good time to get pre-approved, or should they be waiting? What's your advice on that?
Yeah. My day job, was mortgages. You're like, wait a minute, this spiritual guy's talking about loans? That's right. At one point,
Jack of all trades.
I was a pastor. At one point, I was a pastor, full-time pastor, and I worked part-time as a bartender. And that was another hilarious coupling. So, here's the deal. If people are buying for their home and any given 10-year time frame, if you're going to buy in a house and you're going to live in it, the value of the home is going to be there. I don't know if there's ever been a time frame where it's been a bad time to buy. If that's it, if you're going to be your primary residence and you're going to live there for 10 years. The housing values haven't gone down, at least Southern California. But that's just because mostly the demand went down and the amount of buyers, they both went down. And so they matched. And so pricing has held pretty well. I'm helping people buy homes right now where there's 5 offers on the table. And it's not even, and this is in Corona this morning. My client was offer number 5 on a home, and Corona is, not, there's some hot spots, but it's not like it's a well-priced home in.
You're talking
Newport
about Corona,
Beach.
California, right?
Corona, California. Yeah. So the market's there. And who knows, man? I'll always preface that I have no idea. I have no idea. But if it makes sense for you, if you can afford the payment and you want a house that could be yours, it's a great time to buy. If you're going to speculate and try to make a bunch of money on a house in a couple of years, who knows? That's a toughie.
All right. Well, yeah, it's a weird dichotomy. Paul and I were talking about it beforehand. Like you said, the spiritual mortgage broker. Maybe that should be your tagline or something. Man. So
I call myself a conscious mortgage advisor. So
there you go, conscious mortgage advisor.
All about awareness, right?
There you go. Well, we like to ask all of our guests, these questions with the title "Actions and Limits" in mind. What's one action that you would have our listeners and viewers take that can immediately impact their lives?
If the listener would stop and think about what they're thankful for right now without anything changing, nothing changing, exactly as it is. And then go, and if it involves a person, tell that person why if they're thankful for them, or why they're thankful for the thing they share, or however they can do whatever they can do to articulate out of their mouth the thankfulness. Their life will change right in front of them, and that's a beautiful thing to do. And then if they could do that with everybody that they know, this is why I'm thankful. And pretty soon there's not going to be anything that they don't like in their life. That's enough to change a whole life for the better.
Yeah, being grateful. I think, Paul talks about that a lot, like having that gratitude and really being grateful for the things that you do have, even if you are dealing with hard times. So yeah, definitely a powerful thing. The opposite side of that are these, limits that we place on ourselves. So what's one major limit that you see people place on themselves that we should remove?
Well, I think the main obstacle that we have is seeing our obstacles as permanent. Because it's not a bad thing to see an obstacle, but when you realize that obstacles are, they're just the normal bumps in the walls that we all have, and there's always a way around and over or through a bump in a wall. And when you realize that, then it's just a matter of time. And if you throw out the timeline of how and when it should happen, then nothing's impossible.
I like that. Putting a finite, time frame on our problems. I think one of the quotes I've seen is like, is what you're dealing with right now going to matter in 5 years? If you can look that far in the future, and if it's not going to matter, then hey, don't stress too much about it, right? So I like that, putting it into a time perspective with what we're dealing with. So I like that, Jevon. Well, Jevon, thank you so much for coming on the show. You were a very interesting guest to have, that dichotomy, the conscious mortgage broker, working on your book. We'll make sure to put down all your contact information so everyone can look you up, get a hold of your content, and check out your book. And I wish you luck on the next book coming out as well. So, Jevon, thank you for coming on the Actions and Limits podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, Paul. Jevon was a very interesting guest. Very different. The whole mortgage and spiritual thing, it was the conscious mortgage broker. I like that. It really should be his tagline, going forward. What'd you think?
Well, I've known him for a while, and I wanted to bring him on for quite some time because, like you said, he's very, very interesting. He comes at with a different point of view that a lot of people don't have, or a different perspective. And I thought he'd be great for the show, and he definitely is. It's kind of crazy, like you said, how he mixes the mortgage with his, coaching and writing type, but it works for him. Yeah. A great guy. Always have interesting conversations with him, so I'm glad he came on.
Yeah, and the three of us talked off air a little bit, talking about the similarity between his book and Eckhart Tolle's books, and how it's like it gives you a different perspective than you're used to talking about, to where you kind of have to let down, oh, this is something I know about. I'm reading about something I know about, because you're reading about something maybe you haven't exposed yourself to. And those are the type of books that can really have some change. So I'm interested to read his book to see what's there, those different ideas and different type of thoughts, because that is what really can take you to another level when you're interacting with, the world around you or with people in your life. So I'd suggest everyone to check out his book and check out his content too. I know he has videos on his Facebook page and his other content. So no, it was a great guest. Let's wrap up the show with another segment of Ask Paul Anything. Paul, I had this question come in. I thought it was a good fit for today's episode. This is from Jeff in Tallahassee. It says, Paul, can people change?
I think we had this question before, haven't we?
Maybe.
Yeah, we did. Well, yeah, people can change, but they have to want to change. If they don't want to change, they're not going to change. So that would be the only way to do it. So if you have a spouse or a friend and you want them to change because you feel it's for the better for them, they're not going to change. They got to want to change for themselves. So, to answer the question, Jeff, yes, people can change.
Now that we're thinking about it, I think we have had that question before because, I have a very different view on change. And I think I suggested it as a topic. So it's come up again. So maybe we're going to have to do an episode on change itself and really dive into that aspect. But yeah, no, thank you for your question, Jeff. And make sure to continue to submit your questions for the segment Ask Paul Anything and send those into ActionsandLimits@gmail.com. Great show, Paul. Another great week.
Absolutely. For Justin Atherton, this is Paul Fortune. We'll see you next week.
All right. See you next Monday. Thank you for listening to the show. Don't miss an episode. Click and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and find us on Instagram and Facebook under Actions and Limits to stay updated on all our upcoming content. Continue to email the show at actionsandlimits@gmail.com for our segment Ask Paul Anything. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.